Welcome to the Sonic Collective, a music podcast that explores a different album or musical concept each month, diving deep into its history, context, and impact on the music industry. Join our hosts, Alan, Scott, and Darren Scott, that's way too many Scotts, as they share their thoughts, insights, and personal connections to the music, inviting you, the listener, to discover new perspectives and appreciation for some of the greatest albums and music of all time. Yeah, do it live. Yeah, we're so professional here. At the Sonic Collective, it's, really our first value is professionalism. 2 is quality.
That's right.
3 is speed. And 4 is the amount of edibles that most of us are on recording. Yeah.
That's right. Getting a quality endorsement in for some
All right,
edibles.
on that note, I'll jump in. All right. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Sonic Collective. I'm Darren Scott, and I'm joined today with my other 3 friendly members, Scott Gregory here in Calgary, Alan Dupuis here in Calgary, and way across the pond over in Bangkok, Thailand, Scott Coates. So yeah, we know there's a lot of Scotts. We like that. Alan's middle name is Scott. No, I'm just kidding. I have no idea what it is, but that's okay. We're here today to talk to you about a special round that we're doing here at the Sonic Collective, and it is all about one-hit wonders. So we decided to do 4 months of picks. That's 4 of us that will pick each month one-hit wonder and decide, are they worthy of that moniker? Because I think, and guys, feel free to jump in. Like, the first thing I think at the top, I think most people see that as a negative connotation, that you really, you got lucky, you had one good song, made a bunch of money, but then nobody heard of you and you're a bunch of bums. Agree, disagree?
Yeah, there's entire movies around artists having so much anxiety that they're only going to ever do one piece of good work, quote unquote, and that they'll never live up to the hype and the fame that they got for that one piece, right? And they live in the shadow of their own temporary fame until they jump off a building or something.
Yeah. So, I guess there's that negative feeling about it sometimes, but hey, they had a hit, and I heard some crazy stat once. I think it was after, I can't remember, some pop hit came out a few years ago, and this is more modern, but they said that if you have one good kind of charting top 10 hit, it's worth about $10 million to that artist. I'm like, wow, that's kind of an interesting. Wow. Yeah. So if you just get a hit and it's in the kind of the top play charts at any time, just for that one time, it's worth about $10 million. And I'm sure that's a wild ass guess, but anyway, with that kind of in mind, I think, really, I went first, and I decided to pick a band that, I remember. I constantly say I'm the old guy in the group, but I remember a grade 10 dance at Colonel Gray High School, and there was a band there, actually a live band that did covers. And that band, I'll never forget doing Take On Me by A-ha. And I was just first of all, I'm wow, that's a hard song to pull off live. And, in Charlottetown, PEI in 1986, it would have been. I think, this came out in 85, was it? I should have that right in front of me. But, right in that genre. And I heard this band, and I remember that song and was just totally fascinated by it, like everybody else was. And, I do remember them a little more, so I'll save that to when I get into my comments. But I do kind of remember them for that time because I did have a bit of a affinity for that kind of music at the time. But anyway, I chose A-ha Take On Me, and it's on the Hunting High and Low album. And really at that time, this song just kind of blew up, and then there was this video that followed it. It blew up, and then it really got popular. But you know what? I'll stop rambling on, and we're going to I'm going to throw it around. We're going to talk about it, and then we're going to talk about, that song and obviously the album it was on and kind of how that album fared, and then just kind of have a quick review of the artist's career after that, and if they kind of, they were one and done, and they probably deserve that. Let's call it a negative moniker, or they really probably just were super successful and amazing, and we just, didn't follow them after that. But they don't deserve to be kind of pigeonholed into that thing. But anyway, I am going to throw it to Scott Gregory first to see what he kind of thought of a-ha, this one song, the album, and the rest of their life.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. I don't go too much into their family life, so someone else might want to cover out for me there. But yeah, the album, can't say I listened to it a huge amount before. I recognize the singles, Take On Me, Sun Always Shines on TV, Hunting High and Low, the Eponymous track. I was like 9 when it came out, so it makes sense that I would only really hear Much Music, our equivalent of MTV. I think, Darren, you said something really smart in the start of the month clip there, where you're talking about the video really drove this. And for me, I never would have heard it if I didn't see the video on Much Music. And it was an amazing video. No one had done anything like that before. It really captured the attention. And the song itself was actually pretty good. Would it have stood out in a crowd on its own on the radio? I think we got the answer because they actually released it a year before and it didn't do too much. And then when it was backed with this really game-changing video, that's when it caught fire around the world. But I think, you started out with what exactly is a one-hit wonder. And I hate being one of those definition bros, but I think it's really important since, that's really what we're trying to determine here. And I think important to that is, are we really talking American or are we talking international when we talk about one-hit wonders? Because it's a very important distinction here. And most of us are currently or have lived in Canada before for a huge chunk of their life. We're trapped in a domestic market that lives in the shadow of this American titan, and bands dream of making it big down south like Nickelback did, Alanis did for Canadians. But you could be big in your own home country, right? Like a-ha charts consistently in Norway and Germany to this day, selling over like 100,000 records. And I was looking at what's considered gold or platinum in a couple of countries. Norway, 15,000 is gold, 30,000 is platinum. Canada, it's 40 and 80. But then you get to the US and you have to break 500K for gold and $1 million for platinum, right? So it's really hard to stand out and be considered big down there. But they cranked out 11 studio albums, 50 singles, 44 music videos. Was really weird to me. And they've done 100 million records. So, but ask people to name 3 a-ha songs, and if they can, they're probably the 3 that I just named. Take On Me, Sun Always Shines on TV, Hunting High and Low, all from the same album, right? But in Norway, they had 8 albums and 8 singles hit number 1, and 11 of them, I think, and they won the Spellemannprisen 8 times, which is Norway's equivalent of like our Juno in Canada or the Grammy in the US. So yeah, I think we look at them internationally and say they're far from a one-hit wonder, tongue twister there, but they'd be considered so within the USA. And I think of someone like the Tragically Hip, which I know we all love here, right? They've won a bazillion Junos and other awards in Canada, but they're considered one of our greatest bands. Are they bigger than a-ha in the USA, right? Like, I think a-ha outperformed Tragically Hip as far as the American market went. Would we consider them a one-hit wonder? And then the last comparison that I thought would be good would be with, say, Roxette, because they consistently chart at number 1 in their home in Sweden, including Norway, 2 on top of that. But in the US, they only really had Look Sharp and Joyride do anything in singles off of that. They had far more hits off those 2 albums catch fire than what a-ha did, so I don't think they're a one-hit wonder in that capacity. But then they pretty much faded as well. But they've consistently maintained radio play. You can list them off and people will know who they are, and they have worked up until like Maria's health issues, but they were working like consistently over decades. So I think we should put a-ha in the same boat of Roxette, and I am firmly in the no camp, that we can't just allow ourselves to be trapped with this US version of what their performance was, particularly since they're not from the US. And go with where their actual domestic market would be, and they hit it out of the park, and they've been doing it for decades. What do you think, Alan?
All right. Thanks, Scott. I really like what you said about the US centric one hit wonder thing. Um, I guess I've never really thought about it that much. I assumed that like the gold, diamond, platinum album sales thing was kind of a universal standard, and I have learned something new today. So thank you for that. Um, for my part, I could only ever name one Aha song, and obviously that's going to be "Take on Me." Fun to do at karaoke too if you're wearing particularly tight underwear. Um, so yeah, I couldn't even tell you the name of the album that the quote unquote one hit wonder resided on until Darren, you picked this album. Um, I didn't know what to expect. Honestly, High and Low hit harder than I thought it might, considering Take on Me was their only big memorable hit in a US centric, one hit wonder spectrum. And I think for a lot of people, you're kind of primed to expect the larger bodies of work to be subpar with bands that kind of attained a one hit wonder. But I'm going to make a prediction for this series that we're doing here that we're probably going to learn this isn't necessarily the case. You can't assume that the band only had one hit because it was the only good song they did. It just might have been the way the dice rolled, the way things shook out. So I'm going to predict that now at the beginning of this, that we're probably going to like the music we hear from one hit wonder bands more than we maybe expected. Anyway, on to this particular album. Sonically, it is absolutely rooted in the 1980s with all of the driving synths and pulsing drum beats and super heavy reverb that one would expect from popular music from that decade. I mean, it's almost like a musical trope. I kind of half expected Don Johnson to bust out of my earphones in a Ferrari Testarossa wearing a hot pink blazer. Like that's, if you could sum up the sound of this album, I think that paints a pretty decent picture. And if you like that quintessentially 1980s pop rock format, then I think you're actually going to like this album quite a bit. Personally, I jam to the 1980s sound. My 1980s playlist sees heavy rotation. And for what it's worth, like I am just slightly too young to have really enjoyed that era firsthand. I was born in 1984, and by the time my musical taste had developed, it was kind of like a world of grunge and alt rock. For that era. So for me, there's this strange feeling of almost imagined nostalgia when I listen to music like this. Like there's glimmers and bits and pieces from my early childhood, but whatever echoed throughout popular culture into the future is kind of where my foundation for this music really lies. So it's interesting for me to explore stuff from like before I was born, basically. I wouldn't say that Take on Me was the best album or the best track on this album. In fact, for my money, The Sun Always Shines on TV was 80s pop perfection. And for me, it was the standout track on the album. It does not surprise me that that was their, next single or whatever. And if we go by just purely Spotify's play counter, it's their next most popular song. It's still a far cry from the over 1.4 billion with a B plays on Spotify that Take on Me amassed. But, obviously that song was and is still massive. As Darren mentioned, the video is really cool. But yeah, there were some other tracks on the album that had me coming back. Train of Thought and I Dream Myself Alive. Those were, the upbeat poppy tunes. And if you are a longtime listener, you know that that's typically what I tend to gravitate towards. Hunting High and Low is a nice, slow, ballady tune that managed to drop the BPM without dropping my mood along with it. So that gets a thumbs up from me. Although, do I think it was a strong enough track to be the album's namesake? Personally, not really, but whatever. I enjoyed this album. There were a few things I didn't like about it. Some of the songs I didn't love, like the sing-songy nature. You could tell that English wasn't their first language, so the lyrics kind of didn't always make sense. But whatever, that's nitpicky. Um, Getting to a higher level, the Blue Sky, the track "The Blue Sky" didn't really move me. Neither did the track "Love Is Reason," and neither did the track "Here I Stand and Face the Rain." So, it's for me, it's like a mix of like 60% tracks I like versus 40% tracks that I would probably skip if I listened to it again in the future. Um, there's a point that I was going to make, and I can't remember it anymore. But yeah, that's basically my thoughts on this album. And I want to throw it over to Scott Coates now.
Thanks, Alan, and thanks, Scott. Yeah, this is kind of interesting how we're going about this. And I got to admit, I didn't do the research that both of you did, which really help add a lot of context to this album and sort of the band itself. I can't believe they sold 100 million records, although, hey, there's a lot of people in Europe and whatnot. I unfortunately kind of listened to this like one of our regular reviews, which I now realize is kind of not the best way to go about this. And yeah, your definition of a one-hit wonder, Darren, was a pretty good one. And then it calls into question, like, what are we judging this album on? I thought we were judging it on the whole album. Are we judging it on the single? Are we judging it on, is the album as good as the single within? So my take is going to be a bit different, but I completely agree with what Alan and Scott just said, particularly not looking at it the US context. And Scott, you also made a very good comment that they've sold more albums than the Tragically Hip, which as a Canadian is a bit tough to stomach. When I heard Take On Me, I've heard this song, as I'm sure all of you have, hundreds and hundreds of times. But to me, this song, 110% still stands up. It could have come out yesterday, right? And I really think this is, one of just a few hundred tracks probably ever made that will probably stand up almost forever, right? And I bet you could put this song on at any event, at any party, at any dance, and people would either dance or tap their toes or feel good or be happy. And there's not too many tunes that can do that. And I think this still absolutely does that. So as far as does the one hit wonder song stand up, I think, yeah, completely nailed it. And while it must be very difficult as a band to grapple with that kind of success and trying to follow it up and probably never quite following it up, but globally, as Scott pointed out, like they've won tons of awards in their home country, and they're probably huge in Scandinavia, but globally it must be a bit daunting. But there also should be something, and I hope these artists that we'll talk about can find some happiness in knowing they pulled it off at least once globally, because very, very few people in the world do. So I thought the song was still incredible. I wonder what teenagers who've never seen the video would feel about it, because unconsciously I do find myself thinking of the video. Like, it was a monumental video at the time with the drawing and the art, and there's a tie-in kind of emotionally for me. So I'd be curious, teenagers who haven't seen the video, what their feelings would be. As far as the rest of the album, yeah, it just didn't grab me. It's strange. I'd never listened to this album. And how was this song so big that I never heard the whole album? And I don't think my friends at the time bought the album, or else I would have heard it. But the only other song that kind of grabbed me a bit was Train of Thought. And I felt this seems like it could be really good in a John Hughes movie, as there is a montage, the heroes kind of running around trying to sort out final plans. It was listenable. I found the rest of it, it's highly dated. I mean, it all to me was very, very 80s pop that doesn't age very well, like Blue Sky, Living in a Boy's Adventure Tales really remind me of something like OMD or Bronski Beat or Pet Shop Boys. Love Is Reason, same thing. That's 80s synth, like somebody mentioned Miami Vice before. The Sun Always Shines on TV also reminded me of something that could be a montage on TV as a detective rushes to get all the missing pieces together. And I Dream Myself Alive, 80s synth. So I guess the point is, listening to it now in 2023, Take On Me, love it. The second song on the album, Train of Thought, can kind of listen to it. The other ones to me really don't age well, and they're hugely, hugely tied to 80s synth pop. But I'm not sure why I never heard this whole album when it came out. And I also wonder, would I have really enjoyed the whole album when it came out. And I'm not sure because it's about 40 years too late, but glad we listened to it. And again, just surprised I somehow missed it because this was a massive song and arguably is still a massive song. That's something I'd like to think on our one hit wonders. Like, how many of these songs are still massive? Because again, I think you could put this in a car ad or damn near anything anywhere in the world and it would work and be popular. So, Darren, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I so agree in a lot of the points that got brought up there, and it's interesting as I guess we're really starting to deconstruct or think about what a one-hit wonder means or these kinds of bands. But yeah, so a-ha started in Oslo, Norway, 1982. It was started by Paul Waaktaar and Magne Furuholmen. It was them, and they had another person in a band. I think it was called Bridgeland, and then they disintegrated that band. But Paul was 15, Magne was 16 when they came up with that riff, like 15, 16 years old, and then they developed the song over time. But like they basically had it their whole career. But yeah. I mean, so. Crazy. And then Morten Harket, the lead singer, who like his range and voice, and none of us really zoned in on that, but like he is an incredible singer. Like it's crazy, his range. And I know Alan is an amazing singer as well and has a really good range, but like anybody else would never attempt this at karaoke. It's up there with like Paradise City, Guns N' Roses, or oh my God, like don't try those songs. Like they just don't do it. Like I got booed off the stage once for trying one of those. But so I remember this era well. And here's where I'm going to kind of add a little something to it because we're talking about pop a lot. And this was probably maybe it definitely is a top 5 for sure pop song of all time. They're not a pop band. Here's where I think they were misunderstood. And even when they wrote it, and I watched there's some mini documentaries on YouTube and some other things about the history of the band and the song. And really, they were known. They felt their music in general before they really wrote the song, but who they were more dark. They were more new wave, emo. They were kind of early emo goth. They were kind of in this real 80s new wave thing, which was kind of a descendant of punk. And, Alan Cross, a great Canadian rock kind of podcaster and writer, has said that many times before. It's like new wave is kind of one of those things. It's like, it's not punk, but you can tell it came from there, was influenced by punk. And, you think of bands at the time, I think, they get put in, the confusion is that was such a pop song. People think, oh, like Michael Jackson or Madonna, but no. I think that if you think more, and you said John Hughes, and I'm like more like Spandau Ballet, Psychedelic Furs, The Cure, Major, and so even Duran Duran did go a bit poppy, but they kind of started this new wave. So I think really they were more dark emo, early emo type of band that just hit a home run with a pop song. And in general, their albums are mostly kind of slower emo, kind of, a little darker and moody, and his voice, that was very contemporary at that time in the 80s. I agree it's dated a bit now, but if you're into kind of emo goth music or that kind of thing, like I think you should go back and listen to a-ha, which you might have sloughed off thinking like, oh, they weren't really in that wave in the 80s. But if you listen to their deeper cuts, it's really good music. And as mentioned, there's the stats and sales in other countries and across the world are crazy. There was a correction. I think 100 million. It's not albums. It was actually just units sold. So it's like singles and downloads and things like that. So they didn't sell 100 million albums, but it's still huge. Yeah, but so, an amazing band in their own right, but I think just kind of thrown into pop at that time because they had this pop hit, but I don't think they wanted to keep it up. Probably at that point they had more money than they knew what to do with. And they're like, fuck, we can just write whatever the hell we want at this point. And it is good music. Like I went through a lot of their catalog and they kind of had 3 phases. They were like 85 to 94, and then it was like 05 to 11 or something, and then they continued again. But they're still active, touring, and out there. And some of their newest stuff, it's great. It's kind of almost a little like still almost that new wave emo sound, but a little more adult contemporary. But yeah, and Alan mentioned too about that on Spotify, but it also has over 1 billion YouTube views in that club, which is very elite. And yeah, I mean, they had 11 albums, some compilations, so it wasn't like they were just like 2 or 3 albums and you never heard of them again. They're still producing. And misunderstood artists too. I always think too. You think of somebody like Hootie and the Blowfish, and Darius Rucker went off and started a country career because I think that's really who he was. And even John Cougar, never wanted to be no pop singer. Like he didn't. John Cougar hated his career when he was stuck in kind of the pop in the 80s and everything like that. And then he changed and got more folk and country. I think, I don't not necessarily change, but that's just who they were. I think Aha fits right in that category, those artists as well. And I really agree with your kind of American view of things. Yeah, the video was cool. It was rotoscoped, which was done by hand when they literally paint right on the cells of the film. And they had to do 3,000 cells. It took 16 weeks to do that video. They tried to release the song twice before in the UK and in the US and never took off. It really wasn't until a new producer came in. I think it was at Warner Brothers. I did not write that down. I should have wrote down his name. It's like Alan Tremblay or something. I'm just going to call him Alan Tremblay. Somebody correct me in the notes. But came in and produced them and, said, hey, this will work, but, let's do it. And he realized, I think there was a quote saying like, hey, this singer has the voice of Roy Orbison and looks like a Hollywood, action star. We can make this work. And that really influenced it. This was the early days of, MTV and Much Music here in Canada. And that video just shocked everybody at how amazing and interactive it was. And it was a story, right? And The Sun Always Shines on TV, which I also really liked, Alan. If you watch that, there's a video for that. It's actually a continuation. It actually continues exactly where Take On Me left off. And it actually kind of finishes it quickly. And then the new video for The Sun Always Shines on TV. So interesting little tidbit there. Yeah, I don't have too much more to say. Another cool little stat for Aha, they actually hold the Guinness World Record for the biggest paying audience ever for a pop band. And they had 198,000 people come see them in Rio de Janeiro. Still a record to this day. So, Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, no, none of them. Beyonce, no. It's Aha owns the record for pop for the biggest paying crowd.
That's
Isn't that crazy?
Incredible.
Yeah. So anyway, hey guys, we'll kind of come back here. In general, I think we can discuss this here. I don't think they deserve the moniker of just being a one-hit wonder. And I think, we might come to that conclusion with all the bands we pick, but we might not. But, I guess, do you agree on that?
Yeah, I'll bite the bullet, and I don't think they're a one-hit wonder. I think they're a victim of the success of their biggest hit being just so much dramatically bigger than anything else they ever put out, right? Like you said with the YouTube views, they're only one of 6 bands from the 80s to ever break 1 billion views, right? And the other ones are Guns N' Roses, Michael Jackson, Rick Astley, Cyndi Lauper, and Europe. So that's good company to be in, right? I think their one hit stands as a wonder, but I don't think the band itself is a one-hit wonder.
And I'm rethinking everything because when you brought up the America-centric one-hit wonder paradigm, which is the one I'm most used to, I don't know if they had many great radio hits after Take On Me, but in their home country, they're absolute legends. So
Germany, a couple other countries,
the more Europe centric.
But David Hasselhoff.
Well,
is big
if
in
anything,
Germany too, so we just have to
guys, I almost think that it's we've actually been forced to think about the paradigm of how we think about one-hit wonders because you're right, it is a very just American-centric approach, and technically, and if you're just hey, these are emotional responses. We're all music fans with our own opinions. But really, if you just technically look at it, and it is a very America-centric or just pure numbers, that in the States, they would be a one-hit wonder because they really never did any. But I think that's going to be what we're almost putting up against, this American standard that we're saying isn't fair. It's the same thing as a Tragically Hip here. So, I mean... I think they fall into
applying
that.
It to an international artist.
I mean, I almost hope one of us, force you, but like picks one that's like, no, that was like literally the only song and they sucked. Like that was it. Like, you know, it's like Baby Shark. Like that was that band.
No.
They did Baby Shark and they never peaked again. Like, you know, I please don't pick Baby
Hey,
Shark.
Baby Shark Halloween episode really hit it out of the park too.
Anyway.
So, but you made it hard, right? Because you picked an international artist. I think if you would have picked like "What's Up" by Four Non Blondes, no problem. Would have been an easy call. Right?
How do you know they're not big in Thailand?
Scott
They
Coates,
could have
you know,
won
Four Non-Blondes.
Huge. No, you do hear that song.
They could
in
have won
bars
a
over
whole
here
bag
lot.
full of Speller Man prisons themselves. Yeah.
The expat bars, probably.
I think they swore to never play the song again in concert, didn't they? Didn't I hear that somewhere? That they just hated that song so much that they didn't want to ever sing it again.
They didn't
in
love
concert.
it. They didn't love it. I mean, it was first named Juicy Fruit because they just thought it was so poppy and sappy that they never wanted to play it. They literally didn't like it. They didn't see it as a pop band. They're like, I invented this best pop riff ever. What do I do? Like, yeah.
Make the money. Take the bag.
How about we do a quick just score for that Hunting High and Low album, and then Alan, what do you think?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'd say it was a pretty decent album overall. If, as we established, you like the very much 80s sound. I personally do. So for me, this definitely held up much better than I anticipated it would. I think they shouldn't have just been a one-hit wonder in the North American market, because that, as most of the other tracks on this album demonstrate, these guys know how to write a catchy song, and they know how to do it well, and it was well executed. So onto the numbers. Overall, for me, I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5. I think it was a pretty decent album. As I mentioned personally, there were a few songs that I didn't love, but definitely a couple of these are going to make it to my my general 80s playlist. Which brings me on to whether or not I would recommend this album. Everyone in the world has heard Take On Me, but should you listen to the rest of the album that Take On Me finds itself on, I'm giving this like 4 out of 5 for recommendations. I think as long as you like that 80s style sound, there's something to like about this album.
Awesome, man. Scott Gregory.
Yeah, so just quickly on the album, I thought, as Alan and everyone else did, it's a fairly typical 80s synth pop album. The singles are fine. The B tracks are fine. Everything's pretty chill. Nothing really stands out for me past the singles. And in all honesty, it probably feels a little flat. And this is coming from someone that loves the Pet Shop Boys. I feel like you guys said this could be a soundtrack to something, but for me it was like the never-ending story or Labyrinth, right? Something that it has that kind of play through on it. I could take it or leave it. It is on my shower karaoke rotation, so that puts it at like a 3, just based on happy shower time. Would I recommend it? Like a 2, because I'll just say, if you had to pick a synth pop album, Pet Shop Boys. They do it better. It's easier to dance to. It's more fun in the shower, just like the Pet Shop Boys. And yeah, what do you think, Scott Coates?
I think you should have never told us about being in the shower listening to this song, is what I think. But
so wait till you hear how I hit the high note.
yeah, no, it's all starting to make too much sense. This is a tough one. The song, I think we all agree, is absolutely fantastic. It's super 80s synth, but I don't feel like any of these other songs really grabbed me enough where I went, oh, wow, that's a great song that I'd really recommend it. So recommend the single? Yeah, absolutely. A 5 on the single. Recommend someone listen to the album? I got to give it a 2 out of 5 because I just don't think there was other really enjoyable, strong songs throughout. So yeah, amazing single, but I don't think people really need to listen to the album unless they're going down the deep dive of 80s pop and particularly maybe want to get into the Europop a bit. But glad I heard it. Darren.
Yeah, thanks, and I'm pretty on board with you. Actually, all your scores as well. I loved it, and actually, I love new wave. Again, old, lived through it, and just was actually drawn to that at the time. Like even like Canadian bands like Blue Peter, Platinum Blonde, like some other. Yeah, there's lots of good stuff in that time that I have all of it on vinyl, and I listen to it all the time. So I actually really like new wave, and I fell in the category that even though I liked it, I didn't actually see Aha as that at the time as much, and maybe I overlooked them a bit, but it is pretty. At the same time, it is. I'm going to definitely say this is early emo. It's a lot of slow stuff, a lot of he's got a very dramatic, high, low pitch. It's just such an amazing voice. But yeah, I struggle with the album. So if I'm rating the album, Hunting High and Low, if you're a real 80s new wave, that kind of sound, and you like the slower stuff like Spandau Ballet and Psychedelic Furs, a 4. But otherwise, if you're just a regular fan, I'm going to say like a 3 kind of overall. And, recommend, just the general public, I'm going to split that and say 3.5 because I think, there's some good songs and it is a good archival moment. And I mean, you've already heard Take On Me a billion times, but to hear the album around it's probably, hey, you know what? Pay them respect. They caught the world's attention. Go back and listen to that whole album they were on and just try and put yourself in that era of the 80s, I guess. So, again, I thanks a lot, guys. And this is an interesting round. And as the listeners will hear, we're figuring out as we go a bit. But that's okay because actually I kind of like that exploration that we've realized, wow, there's a real way of thinking about this from a very just America-centric point of view. And if our listeners don't know, we're actually all Canadians. Scott Coates lives in Thailand now, but so we have this kind of outside view of that as well, because we're just like poor little Canada that's just better at hockey than everybody. Anyway, yeah, very cool, very cool. Scott Coates, you're up next. You want to leak anything, or we should just wait?
I've been considering a few, and I've been really going for, do you pick that band that only had one song and then is no longer? But then I looked at Aha's, and I mean, they still continue to have a career. I'll admit a few have popped into my head. One was the Spin Doctors, Pocket Full of Kryptonite, but there wasn't one hit. That album had 2 massive ones and 2 more that were reasonably big. So I think I decided that doesn't really qualify as a one-hit wonder. Album-wise, one-hit wonder, but they had quite a number of big songs. So I passed on that one. Another song popped into my head, Keep Your Hands to Yourself by Georgia Satellites.
Oh my God, yeah.
That song.
Right.
But I think where I am landing is, because I still listen to this song a lot, is Maybe You've Been Brainwashed Too by New Radicals. And there's a couple reasons. One, because You Get What You Give. I really like that song, but I know a lot of people hate it. And then Josh Freese was just named as the new drummer for Foo Fighters, and it turns out he played a couple tracks on that album. So that was the deal sealer. So it's going to be that one, I think. Maybe You've Been Brainwashed Too by New Radicals.
That's a cool pick. Cool pick.
That's going to be a cool one.
That'll be a good
I know a little bit about the story there and the guy, Greg something. That's going to be an interesting.
More to follow. Check out the post on the Sonic Collective. It should probably be up on or around June 1st with some background of the album and why we picked it.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Scott. I'll sign us off here. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this little back exploration of Aha's Take On Me, one hit wonder. I'd recommend there's a 1991 album, Headlines and Deadlines, that has a compilation of some of their best hits. It's actually, I found that the best to listen to. MTV Unplugged, they actually did an album in 2006, and there's an acoustic version of Take On Me that's actually quite stunning. But anyway, with that, I'll leave you with this iconic pop riff as we play out Take On Me from Aha. And thanks to all of you, and thanks for listening. Join us at thesonic.collective.com for lots of more stories, photos, and other links and stuff like that. And also, obviously, listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, but tell your other friends because we're on the other ones as well. All right, signing out for the Sonic Collective from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and Scott across in Thailand. This is Darren Scott saying goodbye. Hey, thanks for joining us on the Sonic Collective, where we've explored the music, the history, and the impact of some of the greatest albums of all time. We hope you've enjoyed our discussions and gained new insights and appreciation for the music you and we love. Join us next month for another exciting album, and until then, keep listening to great music.